Hello and welcome to another motorcycle video. I'm off on my Spider looking for a place to run again, and it's about 6:30 in the morning, maybe a little earlier than that, on Monday the 15th of April 2024. It's a bit of a chilly morning, but that's more for the running conditions than it is for the motorcycling. So I'm off motorcycling, and in this video I'm going to talk about infotainment screens again. You can see by the title of the video, which is Pay Attention to the Road, that it's going to be a matter to do with road safety and to do with motorcycle safety. But I've decided to talk about infotainment screens again. In February of this year, I made a video talking about infotainment systems in cars. That is, those screens that are in many cars these days, in fact most cars these days, that provide lots of information about the car's function, and they're a bit like an iPad or an Android tablet, and they have heaps of choices and heaps of menus to negotiate, and in many cases many of the functions of the car are operated through the infotainment system. I was prompted to do it at the time because I'd seen lots of cars with these tablets or screens in them. My own car doesn't have those screens, by the way, and I'd been watching a review of somebody reviewing a car. I can't remember the brand, but if you go back and find that other video, I'll probably mentioned it. And the gentleman who was reviewing the car was talking about a particular feature of the car that he wanted to turn off, and he had to navigate his way through menus on the screen, and his eyes were off the road for something like 12 seconds, travelling at 100 kilometres an hour. Now, somebody who's a mathematician could work out the distance he travelled in that time, but my issue was, in the first instance, that the screens themselves could be quite distracting and quite dangerous, but also the desire of motorists to turn things off because they're getting annoying beeps or something was a feature that ought not to be able to happen. By that I mean that if you own an electric vehicle in particular, but any vehicle that contains any of these advanced driver safety assistance things like auto emergency braking, lane keeper assist, speed sign recognition and so on, you know that every time you get in your car, those systems are all active. By default, they are all active. In order for the manufacturer to earn a 5-star ANCAP rating, they have to have those systems, and they have to be active. There would be no point in putting them in if they could be permanently disabled. So every time you get in the car, you have to disable them. So what needs to happen is, as a driver, you need to, a bit like a pilot does a checklist before takeoff, do a checklist and think, now which of these are particular beeps and alarms and signals do I find annoying and that I don't need, and which ones will I turn off, and turn them all off before you start the car moving. For the manufacturer, you need to do one of two things. One option is to say, well, things cannot be turned off or adjusted. Any of these alarms cannot be turned off while the car is in motion. So if the driver wishes to do them, then they have to pull the car over to the side of the road and turn them off, or they can only be turned off by a voice-activated command. So I'm told that some of the electric cars in particular, BYD, Tesla and the Aura Funky Cat, or the Aura, I think it's just called in Australia, all have a voice-activated assistant where you can give it certain basic instructions like turn up the temperature or lower the window or increase the speed of the fan or something like that, and it will do those things. But you can't tell it to turn off the speed sign recognition thing. You can't tell it to turn off the distracted driver alert. And if it's your wish to have those things turned off, then you should do them before you set off. Now, that was, as I say, in February, which is a couple of months ago, but a day or two ago, I was watching another guy testing another motor vehicle. This was a Cherry Amodo 5, and he was on a multi-lane highway heading west out of Melbourne to test how this electric vehicle would go in what he considered to be sort of outback conditions or rugged off-road conditions. At one point he was talking about the driver distraction alarm, and what happens is that there's either a camera or some sort of sensor in the car that detects when your eyes are not fixed on the road. And if it's for more than a few seconds, it starts beeping an alarm and putting a message up on the screen. Now, in his case, he had a camera attached to the windscreen in the passenger position, and he was talking to the camera. So, of course, his eyes were distracted from the road, and so the alarm was going off. So he decided, well, I want to turn this thing off because it's annoying me, and it's intrusive and it's not well calibrated and so on, and I want to turn it off. So he starts, while the car's driving at 100 kilometres an hour, mind you, he starts searching through the tablet, flicking or swiping, whatever it's called, and then finding the menu and then tapping the appropriate thing in the menu and then tapping the screen again. And it would have taken him about 10 seconds to find the particular thing he wanted turned off. And all the time he's doing that, his eyes are off the road. And obviously that presents a danger to him, but also it presents a danger to everybody else on the road, because while you're not paying attention to the road, you're not necessarily aware of what's in either lane, on the lanes either side of you, even if the traffic's all going the same way as you, never mind if the traffic's going the opposite way. Now, in that video I also argued that some of those things should not be turned off because they were helpful in advising motorists about things that might be in their blind spot, for example, like a motorcyclist. And if they were about to make a turn into a lane where there was a motorcyclist and the blind spot monitoring was turned off, it's very likely that they would clip the motorcyclist and there could be something from pure cosmetic damage to a bike to a catastrophic event. So that was my thinking on infotainment screens in cars then, and my thinking hasn't changed. But what has caused me to think about this issue a bit more is that I've noticed now that multifunction screens are becoming more common on motorcycles. And so, to be honest, I should own up and say that the Spider that I drive has a multifunction screen. It provides me information about what radio station I'm listening to. By using a switch on the left handlebar, I can flick through a number of screens, including fuel consumption and mileage and kilometres travelled and so on. So there's a few things like that I can do on my 2012 Spider. But I know that the current Spiders have an app which is developed by BRP, who are the manufacturers of the Spiders, which allows you full phone connectivity, and you can do Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, although many people complain the app doesn't work very well and they're not happy with it. But then you have a multifunction screen that can do a number of things. I noticed the Yamaha T-Max 550 scooter, it also has a multifunction screen with full phone connectivity and built-in GPS. So there are a number of options there which appear to be mostly operated by buttons on the left on the handlebar rather than a touch screen. But the Kymco 550 has a multifunction screen, and it is a touch screen that again has a variety of functions, including full phone connectivity, a GPS, and a variety of other functions that are allowed through the screen. The Honda Goldwing, for example, also has a multifunction screen which allows again full phone connectivity and has a variety of functions, including settings for the motorcycle, settings for the audio system, and so on. As does the just let me check my notes here to make sure I say the right model. The Indian, hang on, I'm just looking at my notes to find the Indian Pursuit. It has a multifunction touchscreen similar to the infotainment systems that you find in cars, and has many of the features that you find in cars, including GPS, audio, phone connectivity, and Apple CarPlay. So there's a bunch of motorcycles now that are having these multifunction screens. And you could imagine there would be a time when some of the things that are part of the ADAS suite of driver assistance in cars could come into motorcycling. For example, many motorcycles these days come with cruise control, but adaptive cruise control can't be far off. The idea of adaptive cruise control is that when the car in front of you slows down, your car, through sensors and cameras, detects that it's slowing down, keeps the cruise control operating on your car, but slows your car down. There's also autonomous emergency braking, which does the same thing. When the car in front of you stops suddenly, your car reacts and stops you faster than you would be able to do it. Obviously, things like lane keeper assist and rear vulnerable person assist are probably not very useful or important on a motorcycle, but you could see where autonomous emergency braking might come in handy, or you could see where adaptive cruise control might come in handy, and things like ABS and traction control and electronic brake distribution and so on are becoming more common on motorcycles. Now, the problem I have with this, and this is why I've called this video Pay Attention to the Road, is that human beings are naturally curious beings. And if you, when people walk past a sign that says wet paint, they touch it to see if it's still wet. The sign could have been put there 5 minutes ago or 5 hours ago, but if there's a sign that says wet paint, people will touch it to see if it's still wet. So if you put switches, knobs, or anything like that in a car, people are going to play with those knobs or switches and find out what they do. When you provide a screen, people are going to play with the screen and find out what features there are and what happens when you tap this or tap that, or why can't I do this, or I want to be able to have that, wonder if I can drill down into the menu and find it. And that's okay if you've got a passenger that's doing all that while you're driving, but if you're doing that while you're driving, then that's not okay in terms of concentrating on the road. So let's imagine that some of these features in the not too distant future become more common on motorcycles. Obviously, things like driver alert are not going to be terribly useful, because there's no point in sounding an audible alarm, because you're probably not going to hear it. But maybe a visual warning on the screen is telling you that your eyes are wandering and you're not paying attention to the road might be helpful. So imagine that you're now riding down the highway on your motorcycle at 100 kilometres an hour, and you decide that there's a particular feature that's on your motorcycle that you no longer want to have operating. You want to turn it off because it's annoying you or whatever, and it operates through either a touch screen or a series of buttons or button pushes on the handlebar. Whatever you're concentrating on making that shift and making that change to the operation of the motorcycle, you are not paying attention to the road. And while you're not paying attention to the road, you obviously become more vulnerable to accidents caused by poor road conditions, potholes in the road, drivers who are not paying attention themselves because they're also playing with their screen, or things that you're just not noticing because you're too busy noticing the screen. Now, I get it that many people are at the point where they expect to find these things on their motorcycle because that's what they have in their car, and they want to be able to have their phone connected so that they can stream music through the audio system, or they don't have a GPS and they don't trust the GPS that's in the motorcycle because it's not updated frequently. They don't have to pay for a subscription to get new maps and so on, so they connect their phone and turn on Google Maps to help them navigate where they want to go. So I get it that that's what people want, and in my own defence, I have a GPS that attaches to the infotainment screen of the motorcycle. It's a touchscreen operated one, and it issues me with the audio instruction, with voice instructions through the audio system of the bike. So I put it on and I leave it to do its job, and I just ride along, and but I see that once you have this thing like a phone in front of you or a screen in front of you, you're going to. It seems to be human nature that people have then got to start paying attention to the phone, and a message comes in, and you've got to read the message, and you might even want to be foolish enough to attempt to answer it. So as I say, I understand that people want these features on motorcycles because they have them in their cars and they want to be in contact and be able to use their phone while they're riding, and they want to be able to stream music or their podcasts or their audio books or whatever it is. But in the same way as I've said with cars, some of these features either ought to be unavailable for alteration once the bike is in motion. In other words, you can't turn something off or you can't change a setting. For example, on my Spider, if I'm on an FM station, I can't change to AM stations while I'm riding, and I can't change if I'm playing my music through an auxiliary connection. I can't change to a Bluetooth connection. I can only just continue to listen through whichever option I've chosen. So if I've chosen an AM station, for example, when I set out, then I've just got to find the next AM station that I've pre-programmed as I'm riding along. So in the case of my Spider, I can't say what happens with the newer versions because of this app and because of the ability to connect your phone to it and so on. But in the case of my Spider, there are many functions that are greyed out that I just cannot access once the bike is in motion. So if we're going to see more of these features coming into motorcycling and more functions provided in multifunction screens, then manufacturers have to start thinking now about the potential distraction that would cause for the rider, and either use a voice command, which is not going to work pretty well when you're roaring along at 100 kilometres an hour or 110 kilometres an hour and the wind's blowing as well. You're not going to be able to say, Siri, turn up the music, Siri, disable the lane keeper assist or something. That's not going to work. So it's going to have to be a system of saying, well, if there are going to be some of these features on our motorcycles from now on, then our only option is to say, will you make adjustments to whatever ones you want on or off or however you want things before you start riding, and then once the motorcycle's in motion, you cannot, all the options are greyed out. The switch gear, you can press the switch gear as many times as you like and nothing will happen because it's all greyed out. So going back to the title of this video then, our job as motorcyclists, as the job is of anyone that's in a car or a truck or any other motor vehicle for that matter, is to pay attention to the road. For us, motorcyclists, we are infinitely more vulnerable because we don't have crumple zones and airbags and all that stuff around us. We don't have 4 contact patches to keep us stable on the road. Most of us have 2 contact patches. In the case of the Spider, we have 3, and they are a bit more stable. But almost in any altercation between a car and a motorcyclist, you're going to come off worst. So pay attention to the road. If you have a infotainment screen or multifunction screen on your bike, think about what features do you want, what music do you want to listen to, or podcast or whatever it is. Load it all up before you get going, and then just let it go and set it and forget it. You can adjust the volume with your switch gear, yes, but don't be fiddling around with the screen and tapping the screen and think about the message that came in from so-and-so reminding you about dinner at whatever time it is or something like that, because whenever your eyes are off the road, you are vulnerable and you're an accident waiting to happen. All right, well, thanks for watching and thanks for listening to me sermonise about road safety and motorcycle safety again. I hope that when you're out on the road, you are safe. I hope that people around you pay attention to you and notice that you're there, and that you have a good trip wherever it is you're going. And I'll talk to you again in the next video. So I'll leave you to enjoy the scenery for the next half a minute or so, and say thank you for watching.